In the next 10 minutes, you're going to learn the real emotional trigger that destroys more traders after a win than any losing streak ever could. If you've ever looked at your account and asked yourself, how did I blow that so fast? I was just up. Then stay right here. You're exactly where you need to be. Before we dive in, I want to ask you something. Comment below. When was the last time you made a trade just because you felt unstoppable? You know what I mean, that I can't miss moment. That's the emotion that ruins traders silently. And today, we're going to break that cycle. Welcome to Chapter 1 of Why Paul Tudor Jones says these 5 rules decide your success after wins. This is the calmest, clearest look you'll ever hear about the hidden danger that shows up when you feel your strongest. Winning. Not losing, winning. You came here because you're smart enough to know something's off. You feel the shift inside you after a good trade. You feel that warm wave of confidence rise, and something in you says, I can push it just a little more. Let's slow down the noise. Let's breathe for a moment. You're not here to chase hype. You're here to master the psychology behind every execution. You're here because a part of you knows your wins don't just show your skill, they expose your weaknesses. And that's exactly where Paul Tudor Jones built his empire, in the quiet spaces between confidence and danger. Today, I want to bring you into his mindset. Not the billionaire portfolio, not the hedge fund fame, but the emotional discipline behind each decision. The part most traders never learn. Jones once said, the most important rule of trading is to play great defense. But here's the part most people miss. He wasn't talking about losing days. He was talking about the emotional chaos that hides behind a winning day. Let's peel it back. Imagine this. You close a clean, beautiful trade. Your analysis was sharp. Your timing was perfect. Your entry and exit looked like they belonged on a training poster. You feel good, energized, powerful. And in that exact moment, the danger begins. Because the brain doesn't celebrate wins the same way it processes losses. Losing hurts. Winning blinds. The dopamine spike after a win literally dulls the part of your mind that handles judgment. It makes you feel invincible, and invincible is the most dangerous mindset you can bring to the market. That's why you're here, to learn how the best traders in the world, the ones who have everything to lose, stay calm after a win. Paul Tudor Jones built his entire strategy around something most traders never even think about. What you do after success will decide whether you keep it. In this audiobook, you're going to learn the 5 rules he used to avoid the post-win spiral that takes down traders who should have made it. Rules that protect your capital. Rules that protect your mind. Rules that protect you from the version of yourself that shows up right after victory. But before we get to those rules, this first chapter is about preparing your mind. Because if you're going to understand why PTJ was obsessed with emotional steadiness, you need to feel the contrast. Think back to the last time you hit a winning streak. Not one win, a streak. Back-to-back green days. Maybe a big breakout. Maybe a lucky run. Maybe perfect discipline. Did you feel yourself loosening your rules? Risking a little extra? Taking a setup you normally wouldn't touch? Thinking, if I lose, it's fine, I'm still up. Every professional trader on earth knows that feeling. But the ones who survive, the ones who last years instead of months, they learn to spot that shift instantly, and they shut it down. Paul Tudor Jones used to keep a sticky note on his monitor that said, "Don't be a hero." That wasn't a quote for losing days.
He wrote that because after his biggest wins, he felt the most dangerous version of himself try to take over. The euphoric gambler, the unstoppable genius, the guy who thinks the market owes him one more win. And that's why this audiobook exists. Not to tell you what indicator to use, not to give you a strategy you'll forget tomorrow, but to give you something deeper, a mindset that protects you when you're feeling unstoppable. In these chapters, I'm going to guide you through the psychology that destroys traders and the exact rules that keep elite traders calm, steady, and consistent, especially after a win. You're going to learn how to shut down greed before it starts, how to bring discipline back online when your emotions want control, and how to create a trading identity that doesn't collapse the moment you feel good. Because here's the truth, winning is easy. Keeping the win is mastery. You're here because you're ready to master it. And now that your mind is open, now that you're grounded, it's time to explore the hidden danger that comes right after your best moments. Let's step into Chapter 2. Let's expose the silent threat that destroys traders quietly right after they succeed.
In the next 10 minutes, you're going to learn the one emotional shift that destroys more accounts than losses, news events, or bad setups combined. It's not fear. It's not confusion. It's not even impatience. It's what happens right after you win. Before we dive deeper, let me ask you something. Comment below. When was the last time you broke your trading rules on the same day you had a great win? Be honest with yourself. That's the moment where your real growth begins. Welcome to Chapter 2, where we peel back the quiet, subtle, dangerous shift that happens after success, the shift most traders never even notice until it's already too late. You see, losing hurts. Losing wakes you up. Losing forces awareness. But winning? Winning whispers. Winning seduces. Winning makes you loosen your grip on discipline without even realizing it. And that's the silent threat Paul Tudor Jones warned his traders about again and again. In this chapter, we're going to explore exactly why a winning streak can twist your judgment. We'll talk about how confidence quietly bloats into ego, how discipline melts into shortcuts, and how the exact moment you feel your sharpest can actually be the moment you're in the most danger. Let's break it open. Imagine the last time you had 2 or 3 solid green trades in a row. You felt sharp, dialed in. You felt like you could see the market before it moved. You didn't tell anyone, but inside, you felt different. Lighter, bolder. You felt like you deserved another win. That feeling right there, that subtle spike of invincibility, is what takes traders out of the game. Because after a win, something happens in the brain. It's chemical, automatic, a dopamine rush that mimics confidence, but isn't actually confidence. It's just reward chemistry fooling you into thinking your intuition suddenly upgraded overnight. That's why after a win, traders start doing things they'd never consider on a normal day. They increase position size without a plan. They enter trades faster. They skip confirmations. They ignore their stop-loss strategy. And worst of all, they think they're in sync with the market. This is exactly the trap Paul Tudor Jones learned the hard way. There's a story he shared from his early career, a story he hates reliving, but a story every trader needs to hear. He had just come off a massive winning week. Perfect setups, perfect timing. His confidence was sky high. He felt like the market was speaking directly to him. So he did what many traders secretly do after a streak. He broke his own risk rules. He took a larger position than usual, not because the setup demanded it, but because the win demanded it. He thought, I'm hot right now. I can take this. I've earned it. And in that moment, discipline vanished. Logic shut down.
he took the trade. And the market flipped on him instantly. He lost more in one trade than he had made the entire week. Not because the trade was impossible, not because the idea was bad, but because he wasn't Paul Tudor Jones in that moment. He was the excited, emotional version of himself, the version that thought momentum would protect him. He later said, "I wasn't trading the market anymore. I was trading my mood." That line right there, that is the essence of post-win greed. You stop trading setups, you start trading the feeling of wanting more. That high, that rush, that sense of being smarter, faster, better. But markets don't care about your mood. They care about your discipline. This is why winning streaks are more dangerous than losses. Losing scares you into caution. Winning tricks you into risk. Think about this. If you're being honest, when do you risk the most money? After a loss or after a win? Most traders risk more after a win, not because it's wise, but because it feels safe. And that's the illusion. Winning gives you the illusion of safety. That's the silent threat. You start believing you're hot. You start believing you're due for another win. You start believing you can't screw this one up. And just like that, you're no longer a strategist. You're a gambler with good lighting. But here's the beautiful thing about awareness. Once you see the trap, you can avoid it. In the next chapter, I'm going to show you the first of the 5 rules Paul Tudor Jones used to protect himself from this exact danger. A rule that kept him grounded, sharp, and stable, even after massive wins. A rule most traders ignore because it feels too simple, yet it's the backbone of every elite trader's success. It's the rule that separates a lucky trader from a professional. But before we move on, I want you to sit with this one thought. Winning doesn't change who you are. It reveals where you're weak. And when you understand the psychology behind that shift, you finally gain the power to control it. Now, let's step into Chapter 3 and learn the rule that protects your wins, your mindset, and your career. Chapter 3, Rule number 1, protect the win. Discipline begins after success is waiting for you.
Listen closely, because in the next 10 minutes, you're going to learn the single rule that prevents winners from becoming losers overnight. The rule Paul Tudor Jones said saved him more money than any strategy, indicator, or prediction. And as we go through this, let me hit you with a question early. Comment below. After your last big win, did you trade safer or did you get bolder? Be honest. That answer will tell you exactly where your growth needs to happen. Welcome to rule number 1. Protect the win. Discipline begins after success. Most traders think discipline is what you use when you're struggling, when you're bleeding, when your confidence is low. But professionals know the real danger hits you when you win, because success flips a switch inside you, and if you don't guard that switch, you'll give everything right back. Paul Tudor Jones said, "Don't let a win become the start of your downfall." And that line, that's not philosophy, that's survival. Let's break it down. After a win, your emotions don't just calm down, they expand. You feel sharper, you feel in tune. You feel like the market finally recognizes your brilliance. And right when you think you're stepping into greatness, that's when you're actually stepping out of discipline. You stop protecting your win. You start chasing another one. A win is supposed to be a foundation, not a launch pad for reckless energy. And this is where rule number 1 kicks in. Elite traders always lock in their mental base first. That means resetting expectations to 0, resetting your emotional baseline, resetting your stop-loss strategy,
resetting your position sizing mindset, resetting your sense of risk. The average trader protects their ego. The pro protects their win. Big difference. Let me give you a story Paul Tudor Jones shared from the early days of his trading career. He had just scored a massive trade, one of those trades that makes you feel like Wall Street just bowed at your feet. He felt untouchable. He felt like he earned the right to be aggressive. So he broke the rule. He didn't protect the win. He piled into a new trade with oversized risk. The setup wasn't perfect, but he felt perfect. The market flipped hard, and he lost nearly everything he had just made. He said it was one of the most embarrassing moments of his trading life, not because of the money, but because he betrayed his own discipline. He later said, "I didn't lose to the market. I lost to the version of myself who thought he was smarter than the market." That's why rule number 1 exists. Protect the win, not just financially, emotionally. Here's how top traders do it. 1. They reset their stop-loss immediately after a win. Not later, not when they feel like it, immediately. Because a fresh win makes your brain underestimate risk. 2. They dial down excitement consciously. Yes, they actually force themselves to come down from the high. They intentionally slow their breathing. They intentionally slow their thoughts. They journal the emotional spike. They anchor back to neutrality. They treat the next trade like a brand new day. They don't bring confidence over the way amateurs bring hangovers over. They wipe the board clean. And they refuse to trade the win. They trade the chart. Huge difference. Winning isn't permission to loosen up. Winning is the moment you tighten up. Winning is the moment you treat yourself like a professional, not a gambler on a hot streak. And let's talk stop-loss resetting for a moment. This is something Paul Tudor Jones hammered into his team. After a win, your risk tolerance naturally expands. Your brain says, "Hey, we're up. We can afford a bigger stop." Or, "We're in profit. Let's loosen the leash." But loosening the leash after a win is like texting your ex at 2 a.m. It feels justified, but it's guaranteed to hurt you. Smart traders tighten stops after a win, not loosen them. Because the point of this rule is simple. Protect your mental state, protect your money, protect your discipline. Let me ask you something real quick. If you protected your last win instead of chasing the next one, how much would your account look different today? Think about that. Rule number 1 is not about being cautious. It's about being in control. And when you're in control, you don't just keep your money, you keep your identity. You stay grounded, you stay strategic, you stay calm. This rule is the anchor of the 5 rules, because if you don't protect the win, the other 4 don't matter. Now, here's where things get interesting. Once you understand how to protect the win, rule number 2 shows you what to do next. It's the rule that separates good traders from emotionally bulletproof traders. It's the rule almost no amateur follows because it feels counterintuitive. But professionals swear by it. You're going to learn why Paul Tudor Jones and Stanley Druckenmiller both used this exact technique to stay sharp after success. Get ready, because rule number 2 is the rule that kills euphoria before euphoria kills your account. Let's step into the next chapter. Chapter 4. Reduce size after winning. Never let euphoria decide risk.
Listen closely, because in the next 10 minutes, you're going to learn the rule that saved more traders from blowing up than any risk tool ever invented. Here's your promise. You're about to learn the emotional trigger that ruins traders right after they win and how professionals avoid it with one simple move. And before we even dive in, let me hit you with something that might sting a little. Comment below, when was the last time you increased your position size because you felt in the zone? Be honest. That one moment
probably tells the whole story of your last drawdown. Welcome to rule number 2. Reduce size after winning. Never let euphoria decide risk. Now, let's break this down. Most traders think risk management is something you do when your account is sinking, when you're scared, when you've taken 2 losses in a row, when your confidence is shaky. But pros know the truth. The most dangerous moment in your trading career isn't after a loss, it's after a big win. Because after a win, your mind warms up, your confidence swells, and that warmth, that emotional glow, tricks you into believing you're sharper, faster, smarter than the market. That feeling has a name. It's not excitement, it's not confidence, it's not flow state. It's euphoria. And euphoria destroys more winners than fear ever will. Stanley Druckenmiller, one of the greatest traders to ever breathe, talked about this constantly. He said the moments he felt most confident were the exact moments he had to throttle down the hardest. Because every time he didn't, he paid for it. Let me tell you the story he shared. He had just come off a monster winning streak. Every trade felt like destiny. His read on the market was razor sharp. Clients were calling him a genius, and he believed him. So after this run, he did what many almost great traders do. He went big. Bigger than usual. Bigger than necessary. He increased size because he felt invincible, and the market didn't just humble him, it crushed him so fast he said he could almost feel his ego burning off. He later admitted it was one of the dumbest decisions of his career, not because the trade setup was bad, but because his confidence, not his logic, decided the position size. Paul Tudor Jones echoed the same thing. He said the biggest losses of his life didn't come from bad ideas, but from good ideas sized stupidly after a win. Read that again in your mind. Let it hit your chest. Most traders don't lose from bad setups. They lose from good setups, sized emotionally. And that is exactly why rule number 2 exists. Reduce size after winning. Sounds counterintuitive, right? You'd think that winning means you're seeing clearly, that you earned the right to go bigger. But the pros know something the average trader refuses to accept. After a win, your emotional brain is louder than your logical brain. Your thoughts speed up, your perception shifts, and your risk tolerance expands without permission. And your confidence, although it feels earned, is chemically inflated. Professionals respond to this by doing the most boring, unsexy, disciplined thing possible. They reduce position size. Not because the market requires it, because their own psychology requires it. Here's why this rule is so powerful. 1. Reducing size neutralizes emotional momentum. When you shrink risk, you force yourself to breathe slower. You force your brain back into strategy mode. You stop the emotional snowball before it gets rolling. 2. It breaks the "I'm unstoppable" illusion. A smaller position snaps you out of the illusion that you're the main character in the market storyline. The market doesn't care who you are. It never did. 3. It protects the win before your ego spends it. A smaller size means even if you slip emotionally, the damage is tiny. The win stays intact. You keep your lead. 4. It resets you back to professional thinking. Pros don't try to double the high. They try to protect their clarity. Let me ask you something real quick. After your last win, did you protect your clarity, or did you chase the feeling? If you chased the feeling, you now know why the next trade hit harder than you expected. And this rule doesn't just belong to the greats. It's a universal principle across every high-performance field. Surgeons slow down after a flawless operation. Pilots run extra checks after a perfect landing. Athletes play tighter right after a big score. Why? Because success creates emotional distortion. And if you don't kill the distortion kills your consistency. But trading magnifies this effect more than any other profession because you decide your own risk. The market doesn't size your trade, you do. And when you size a trade under emotional distortion, you're lighting a fuse under your account. So here's the mind shift of this entire chapter. Reducing size after a win isn't punishment, it's the ultimate flex of control. The amateur goes big because he feels good. The professional goes small because he wants to stay good. Let me hit you with a challenge, the kind that exposes your maturity as a trader. Comment below, are you disciplined enough to go smaller when everything inside you wants to go bigger? Your answer will tell me if you're on the path to consistency or on the path to a future blow-up you haven't met yet. Now, as we wrap this chapter, here's what you need to know. Rule number 1 protected your win. Rule number 2 protected your mind after the win. But now comes the rule that separates emotional traders from psychologically elite traders. Because once you reduce size, something magical happens. Your brain becomes clear enough to recalculate risk without emotional contamination. And that brings us directly into rule number 3. The mindset that Mark Douglas believed was more important than any trading strategy. Winning makes you misread the market more than losing. Chapter 5 will show you why and how to think with a cold mind after the warm glow of success.
In the next 10 minutes, you're going to learn the emotional trigger that quietly destroys traders after a win. Not after a loss, after a win. And once you understand it, you'll never look at your winning streaks the same way again. Before we begin, let me ask you something. Comment below, when was the last time you increased your position size just because your last trade was green? Think about that moment. The confidence, the excitement, the feeling of, yeah, I'm on today. Every trader has felt it, even the legends. This chapter is here to help you break that feeling before it breaks you. Here's the truth most traders don't want to hear. If you don't learn to think with a cold mind, the warmth of your ego will quietly sabotage everything you just earned. Mark Douglas said it perfectly. Winning distorts the way you read the market more than losing. You don't realize it when it's happening. You think you're dialed in. You think you're aligned with the charts. You think you're sharper than usual. But that feeling is exactly the distortion. When you win, your brain doesn't stay neutral. It gets flooded with dopamine. And dopamine is a liar. It whispers, push a little more. You're seeing the market clearly today. You can size up. You can skip that stop. That whisper has blown more accounts than fear ever has. Paul Tudor Jones said, the moment you feel most confident is the moment you should be most cautious. And he wasn't talking about fear. He was talking about euphoria, that emotional high that makes you feel like probability shifted in your favor, when in reality, the next trade still has zero bias. Here's what most traders forget. After every win, your expected value resets. The next trade has no memory of the one before it. The market doesn't reward you for momentum. There's no good streak advantage. There's no hot day multiplier. But your ego wants to believe there is. That's where the danger begins. Let's break it down the way elite traders actually think. After a win, amateurs feel empowered. Professionals feel cautious. Amateurs loosen their discipline. Professionals tighten it. Amateurs see opportunity everywhere. Professionals filter even harder because they know the truth. Your emotional state after a win is the worst lens through which to judge risk. Winning doesn't make the market clearer. Winning makes your emotions louder. You start thinking you're reading momentum, but what you're really reading is your own internal excitement. Stanley Druckenmiller once admitted his biggest losses didn't come from fear. They came from confidence, overconfidence. He said that whenever he felt certain, he almost always overplayed his hand. Think about that. One of the greatest traders in history saying certainty, not fear, was the enemy.
That's the emotional distortion we're talking about. So what does recalculating risk with a cold mind actually look like? It means treating the next trade like the first trade of the day. It means neutralizing your emotional uplift before it turns into a blind spot. It means recalibrating probability without any leftover confidence from your previous win. Because a cold mind calculates risk. A warm ego imagines it. Professionals know this. After a win, they don't celebrate. They don't escalate. They don't try to ride the emotional high. They reset every single time. They ask, what's the probability here? Not, how good do I feel? They ask, what's the expected value? Not, how confident am I? They ask, is this setup clean? Not, do I want to stay in momentum? That's the difference between staying in the game and blowing up. Think back to your last winning streak. How many of your trades during that streak were true setups, and how many were driven by the feeling of being right? Be honest in the comments. Awareness is the first step to breaking this cycle. A warm ego thinks it sees the market. A cold mind actually does. If you want to grow into the trader you imagine yourself becoming, you have to master the reset. Not when you lose, when you win. Because the market doesn't take your confidence into account. It only measures your discipline. Now that you understand why a cold mind is the real advantage, it's time to go deeper. The next challenge isn't just seeing clearly after a win. It's detaching from the outcome of that win entirely. The money you made, the boost you felt, the I'm back energy, all of it. In the next chapter, you'll learn why elite traders practice detachment even in the middle of a winning streak, and how they return to process-first precision while everyone else gets reckless.
Rule number 4. Detach from the outcome. Return to process precision. Listen carefully, because in the next 10 minutes, you're going to learn the skill that every elite trader uses to stay sane, stay sharp, and stay profitable. Detachment. Not coldness, not apathy. Detachment. The ability to trade without needing any single trade to validate you. Here's the promise of this chapter. If you stay with me, you'll learn how to reset your mind after a win, control the emotional rush that kills discipline, and return to process-first thinking, the same shift that separates long-term traders from short-lived lucky streaks. Let me ask you something before we dive in. Comment below. When was the last time you took a trade just because you were on a roll and thought the market owed you another winner? If you've ever felt that, you're already halfway to understanding why detachment is the 4th rule. Every trader thinks that danger is losing. But the truth, winning is just as dangerous, maybe more. Because winning triggers the illusion that the rules don't apply to you anymore. That's where detachment becomes your anchor. Ray Dalio understood this better than almost anyone. There's a story he tells about one of his longest winning streaks. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't bragging. He wasn't even thinking about the money. He was worried. Worried that success was blinding him. Worried that he might start believing he could see the future. Worried that confidence could quietly slide into overconfidence and then into disaster. So what did he do? He stopped. He stepped away from the screens. He breathed, slow, deep, controlled breaths. And he asked himself a question that most traders never ask after winning. Am I still following the process, or am I following the feeling? That single question has saved traders more money than any technical indicator ever invented. Dalio would sit in silence and reset himself back to neutral, not positive, not negative, neutral. The only emotional state where precision is possible. Because here's the truth most traders don't want to hear. You can't be precise when you're excited. You can't be rational when you're euphoric. And you definitely can't be disciplined when the voice in your head whispers, let's see if we can double this. Process beats excitement. Routine beats thrill.
Precision beats impulse every time. Think about your last winning streak. Do you even remember the setups, the structure, the execution, or do you only remember the rush? Be honest with yourself. Comment below if you've ever had a win so good that it made you break your own rules the very next day. That's exactly why detachment matters. Detachment is not emotional coldness, it's emotional clarity. It's saying, this trade is just a trade, not a victory lap, not a chance to prove myself, not a shortcut to feeling like a genius. It's one of the hardest mental skills in the game because your brain is wired for reward. Your biology pushes you toward risk right when you need caution the most. But elite traders, the ones who last decades, consciously reject that biological temptation. They return to process. They reset. Here's a simple exercise inspired by Dalio's routine that you can use after a big win. First, step away from your screen for 2 minutes. Not to check your phone, not to analyze the chart again, just leave the trading environment. Second, take one slow breath in, then double the length of your exhale. This shifts your nervous system from excitement to control. Third, say this quietly in your head. The win is over. The next decision deserves neutrality. Your goal is to kill the emotional residue that a win leaves behind, because wins create momentum, and momentum can be lethal if you're not grounded. Detachment is what keeps your feet on the floor while the market tries to lift you into the clouds. Here's something Jesse Livermore understood after decades of painful success. Yes, painful success. He once said that the moments he felt the most confident after a win were the exact moments he became the most vulnerable. That's because confidence whispers that you're untouchable. Detachment reminds you that the market touches everyone, eventually. The only traders who survive winning streaks are the ones who reset their minds fast enough to avoid believing the streak is them. It's not you. It's your discipline. It's your preparation. It's your process. Detach from the outcome. Return to precision. That's rule number 4. And now that you understand why detachment protects your consistency, it's time for the final rule, the rule that has saved traders from self-destruction more than anything else: rebuilding humility. In the next chapter, you'll learn why humility isn't weakness, it's risk protection, and why the best traders, from Paul Tudor Jones to Minervini, rebuild humility after every win to avoid falling into the most dangerous mental trap in trading: the God mode illusion.
Rule number 5. Rebuild humility, the mindset that saves you after a win. Listen closely, because in the next 10 minutes, you're going to learn the mindset that saves more traders than any strategy, any indicator, or any fancy system ever could. Humility. Not the soft kind, not the be nice kind. I'm talking about the razor-sharp humility that protects your capital, your discipline, and your future. Here's the promise. If you stay with me, you'll learn how the greatest traders in history used humility to avoid blowing up after success, and how you can rebuild that same grounding force after every win. Your entire trading career might depend on mastering this chapter. Before we dive in, let me ask you something simple, and I want you to drop it in the comments. When was the last time you took a trade just because you felt untouchable, like you had it all figured out? Be honest. That's the moment this rule was built for. See, here's the truth most traders never accept. Losing doesn't end careers. Winning does. A loss humbles you automatically. A win makes you believe you don't need humility anymore. That's the trap. That's the silent killer. That's the beginning of the end. Paul Tudor Jones said it best. Don't be a hero. Don't have an ego. Always question what you're doing. He wasn't warning new traders. He was warning himself. because he knew the moment he started believing he was special, the market would remind him he wasn't. Let's talk about that God mode feeling. You know exactly what I mean. You hit a big trade, maybe 2, maybe 5, and suddenly the chart feels like it's speaking your language. You're predicting every move. Your confidence flips into overdrive, and then your brain whispers the deadliest sentence in trading. I can push the size. I can take one more. I got this. That whisper has destroyed more accounts than bear markets ever have. Humility is your shield. It's the recalibration of your identity after a win. It tells you you're not the market's master, you're the market's student. Let's go back to Jesse Livermore. He was one of the greatest traders that ever lived, but he even admitted his biggest mistakes came right after his biggest wins. He said that victory made him careless, made him bold, made him believe the laws of risk management didn't apply to him anymore. Imagine being one of the richest traders in the world and still losing everything because success inflated your confidence. If Livermore can fall to ego, so can any of us. Now let's look at Minervini. He said that after a big win, he intentionally shrinks his position size, not because he's scared, but because he refuses to let confidence distort discipline. He resets back to 0, as if he hasn't won anything at all. That's humility as a weapon. That's humility as a strategy. Most traders think humility is weakness. Elite traders know humility is protection. Let me give you something practical, a mental exercise to rebuild humility right after a win. First, say this quietly in your mind. This win doesn't prove anything. It only reflects the process. Second, ask yourself, if I had to trade the next setup with the same discipline I had before this win, would I? Third, imagine explaining your last winning trade to someone who doesn't trade at all. If your explanation sounds like bragging instead of reasoning, you're not grounded yet. Humility is the process of returning to logic after emotion tries to take the wheel. Here's something most traders never admit. Sometimes a win feels so good, you want the market to reward you again. You want another hit. You want another high. You want the feeling more than the setup. That's not trading. That's addiction wearing a financial costume. So let me ask you a real, raw question. Have you ever taken a trade not because it was the right setup, but because you wanted that winner feeling again? Drop it in the comments if you've been there, because almost every trader has. Humility cuts that emotional craving at the root. It brings you back to the mindset that made you a winner in the first place. Caution, respect, patience, awareness. Imagine PTJ after a huge winning month. Most traders would celebrate. He did the opposite. He reduced risk. He tightened stops. He traded less aggressively. Because he knew the biggest danger wasn't the market turning against him. It was him turning against himself. Humility is you saying, I'm not smarter than the market. I'm not bigger than the market. I'm not owed anything by the market. That mindset has saved more accounts than luck ever will. And here's the powerful part. Humility doesn't make you smaller. It makes your decisions sharper. It returns your vision. It clears out the noise. It removes the ego that wants to sabotage your success. You become calm again, clear again, precise again. Your wins don't inflate you. Your wins don't control you. Your wins don't turn you into a gambler with confidence issues. Humility is the reset button for your mind, the emotional detox after victory. So as we close this chapter, I want you to imagine something. Imagine yourself winning and staying grounded. Imagine yourself profitable and still patient.
Imagine yourself successful and still disciplined enough to walk away from a bad setup. That version of you is dangerous in the best way possible. Because when you master humility, you become unshakable. Not because you're perfect, but because you can't be controlled by confidence. In the next chapter, we're going to blend everything together: the detachment, the discipline, the emotional control, the humility. All 5 rules. You'll learn the transformation that turns a trader into something rare: calm, neutral, consistent, unshakable, even after a win. Let's step into that evolution in Chapter 8.
Listen closely, because in the next 10 minutes, you're going to learn how to become the version of yourself you always thought trading would turn you into: calm, unshakable, confident without being reckless, and disciplined without being rigid. This is the transformation chapter. This is where every rule you've learned stops being information and becomes identity. Let me ask you something, and I want you to drop it in the comments with full honesty. When was the last time you won a trade and then immediately felt that little itch to prove something? That quiet urge to show the market you're still right? That's the revenge of your own confidence, and it has destroyed more traders than any losing streak ever will. But today, you learn how to rise above that version of yourself. You're going to learn how to maintain emotional neutrality, how to hold your discipline after a win, how to build consistency when the market tempts you to loosen up, and how to avoid that psychological boomerang that punishes you for feeling good. In the next 10 minutes, you're going to learn how calm wins. Let's bring all 5 rules together. Think back to where this journey started. The moment after a win when your brain wants to drift into fantasy, when the dopamine hits, when the mind says, "You did it once, you can do it again, push harder." That moment is where the amateur trader is born or the master trader is built. The difference comes down to the choices you make in the space between confidence and impulse. Rule 1 taught you awareness. Rule 2 taught you protection. Rule 3 taught you clarity. Rule 4 taught you detachment. Rule 5 taught you humility. Now it's time to become someone who doesn't just understand the rules, but embodies them. Imagine the greatest traders in history: PTJ, Dalio, Druckenmiller, Minervini, not as legends, but as humans who rewired their emotional circuitry. They didn't master the market, they mastered themselves after the market rewarded them. Stanley Druckenmiller said his biggest losses came right after his biggest wins because he let confidence distort his logic. He admitted it openly, and then he transformed. He became the kind of trader who could win and not drift into delusion. You are on that same path. Let's build the identity of a calm, unshakable post-win trader. Picture this. You take a win, clean, controlled, well executed. The old version of you would start feeling electric. Heart rate up, thoughts racing, charts suddenly look easy. You start predicting instead of observing. But the new you, the calm you, the unshakable you, you breathe once, you write down why the trade worked. You acknowledge the emotional shift without letting it pull you around. You reduce size, not because you're scared, but because you respect the danger of confidence. You recalculate risk like nothing happened. You detach from the outcome and return to the process like a surgeon washing his hands before the next operation. This is the transformation. This is how the best traders stay consistent while everyone else starts gambling with a smile on their face. Let me ask you something that could change your career. What if your next win wasn't a signal to speed up, but a signal to slow down? Comment below if that hits you differently right now. Because here's the truth. Most traders don't blow up because they lose. They blow up because they win wrong. They win emotionally. They win carelessly. They win without respecting the psychological storm that comes after a win. Look at Ray Dalio. When he had a winning streak, he didn't celebrate. He didn't flex. He didn't start swinging bigger. He stepped away. He reflected. He breathed deeply until he felt neutral again. His rule was simple:
Never let success get to your head. Never let failure get to your heart. That's what you're building right now. Emotional neutrality. It's not lack of feeling, it's mastery of feeling. Let's talk consistency. Post-win consistency doesn't come from your strategy, it comes from your psychology. Because after success, discipline wants to slip. Your brain says, relax, you earned it. But the market doesn't reward comfort. It rewards precision. Becoming unshakable means you respect the game even when you're winning. It means you follow the plan even when things are going your way. And your wins don't make you soft, they make you sharper. And when confidence tries to trick you into recklessness, you recognize the voice instantly. You say, not today. You return to the rules that protect you. You return to the process that built you. You return to the mindset that keeps you calm while other traders lose their balance. You don't rise or fall with the last trade. You rise or fall with your discipline. You're becoming the trader who doesn't get tilted, doesn't get greedy, doesn't get sloppy. You're becoming the trader who wins quietly, resets quickly, and executes cleanly. You're becoming the trader who treats success like a responsibility, not a reason to take shortcuts. This is the calm transformation. This is the unshakable identity. You're not just learning rules anymore. You're becoming the kind of person who lives them. And in the next chapter, we're going to bring this entire journey home.
If you've made it this far, then listen closely. Because in the next few minutes, you're going to hear the truth that most traders never confront. The part that separates a short-term hot streak trader from a lifetime master of emotional control. You've learned the 5 rules. You've understood the traps. You've walked through the wins, the psychology, the ego, the discipline. But now we take all of it and turn it into your long-term identity. Before we begin, let me ask you one simple question. Drop your answer in the comments, because it matters more than you think. Do you want to be a trader who gets lucky sometimes, or a trader who is emotionally consistent for decades? Everything you've listened to so far has been about one thing: building a mind that doesn't break after a win, doesn't panic after a loss, and doesn't sabotage itself in the middle of success. This final chapter is your reminder that emotional mastery is not a moment, it's a journey. And you're on it now. Take a deep breath for a second. Think about the version of yourself who began this audiobook. Maybe you were fighting greed. Maybe you were struggling with discipline. Maybe you kept blowing your account after good streaks. Maybe you were trying to figure out why winning felt more dangerous than losing. But now, you understand the cycle. You understand yourself. You understand the internal game that every professional trader protects with their life. Paul Tudor Jones said something that never left me. Trading gives you the quickest feedback loop on your emotional weaknesses. And that's why this journey doesn't end here. Your emotional mastery is something you build every day, through habits, through awareness, through the ability to sit with your own ego and keep it in check. Let's bring this home gently. If there's one thing I hope you carry with you, it's this: you don't have to be perfect. You only have to be aware. Awareness is what keeps you from sizing too big after a win. Awareness is what makes you step back when confidence starts turning into arrogance. Awareness is what helps you detach from the outcome and return to the process. Awareness is what rebuilds humility so your ego never outruns your discipline. And that awareness is what makes you unshakable. You're becoming a calm trader, a precise trader, a trader who doesn't get seduced by euphoria or destroyed by fear, a trader who knows how to reset, a trader who respects the game, respects their edge, and respects themselves. Let me tell you something most people never hear. You're already ahead of 99% of traders just by finishing this audiobook. Most people quit before they confront their own psychology, but you didn't. That means something. That says something. If no one's told you this yet, I'm proud of you for getting this far. Now here's your final call to action. And it's not hype, it's not pressure. It's simply an invitation. If you want to continue this journey of becoming a disciplined, calm, emotionally intelligent trader, subscribe to Psych Rich. Not just for the content, but for your growth, for your consistency, for your ability to stay centered in a world that constantly tries to pull you off balance. And if you know a trader who keeps sabotaging themselves after winning, share this audiobook with them. You might save them months or years of pain. You might be the reason they finally understand why confidence needs discipline and why success requires humility. Before we close, picture your future self for a moment. The version of you who trades without panic, without greed, without ego. The version who keeps calm through wins, resets after good days, recalculates risk with precision, detaches from outcomes, and stays humble no matter how high the profits climb. That version of you isn't far away. You're already becoming them. Right now. Right here. Thank you for listening to this audiobook. Thank you for choosing to grow. And thank you for walking the path that most traders avoid, the path of emotional mastery. I'll see you in the next audiobook. Until then, stay calm, stay disciplined, stay unshakable, and trade well.